Hey everybody, my name is Justin D'Antonio and I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Nexar. Very excited to be here in air quotes. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how Nexar is making the roads safer. I'm going to talk about our safe driving network to give you guys an understanding where our great products are coming from, how we get the information we get that we can turn around and provide to you guys to help you monitor the state of the road. So when I talk about the work we're doing, I'm talking about imagery, so images of specific intersections, addresses, places of interest, road sign detection. That would be the work we're doing with Ohio, Las Vegas, and LA to identify street signs and then map them and detect any change over time and provide images of those street signs. We also do construction zone detection with Ohio and Las Vegas, similar idea. We are identifying construction zones, placing them on a map with as much information and metadata as we can, and detecting change over time so you can access that information and help build a smarter city. And then we'll also talk a little bit about incident data. We're selling this today in the private sector for things like autonomous vehicles, but I think there are other applications that fall under the banner of monitoring the state of the roads and helping empower decision makers for smarter transportation. So I'm going to take a step back and talk about the safe driving network so you understand who our drivers are, how we get this data, what we do with it, what kind of coverage we have. And I think hopefully you'll be pretty impressed. So it starts with the hardware. A Nexar dash cam is available for sale on our website. We also have hardware partnerships. So we entered an agreement with a company called Scosh, who is selling Nexar powered hardware that can be found in Walmarts and Costco's as well. And so we see both professional and regular drivers buy our dash cams. They connect the dash cam to our app via Bluetooth, and they record the road. They record their drives, and at the end of each drive, they're given an option to upload the full time lapse of their drive to the cloud. And we provide our drivers with free cloud storage, as well as a number of tools that help them to track and report incidents, should they choose to do so. We're particularly popular with professional drivers who are able to get significant discounts on their insurance by partnering with us. And you know what, when I think of dash cams or thought of dash cams before I came to Nexar, it wasn't something I knew a ton about. It's still a growing market in the United States. It's a little bit more popular in other parts of the world, such as Japan. But we are growing very fast. You can see over the last 2 years, we've seen pretty much nonstop growth with the exception of COVID, but we have bounced back from that already. And we now have over 57,000 weekly active drivers on the road. And so you see, because of that, we have great coverage across the United States, particularly cities. I mentioned the professional driver aspect before. So we see very good coverage in the top 150 or so cities in the United States. But all in all, I can tell you that we see 85% of freeway roads in the US every month, 56% of primary roads, and then 25% of other roads and 5% of residential. Residential is obviously the space where we are trying to improve that coverage, and we hope to do so in the coming months and years. Another way to look at how much imagery we're capturing of a given area. I took New York, biggest and baddest city in the United States, happened to call it home. We broke New York down into slippy tiles. There are almost 13,000 tiles that make up New York, and we see 99% of them per month. We actually see 62% of them every single hour and 94% of them daily. So it's a really substantial coverage. I'm not going to spend too much time on this particular presentation going into coverage across different cities and states, but will be available after the presentation and are more than happy to send anyone interested an Excel file with a bunch of detail about our coverage by month. We can do it by week, we can do it by city, we can do it by state. Happy to slice and dice the data however you all would like to see it. So we've got all these people driving across the US, and now we're going to productize that data. So I mentioned before that the hardware camera connects to our app over Bluetooth. We're actually running AI detections in the app on the phone while people are driving in a very light way that doesn't take up too much space on our drivers' data plans, but it enables us to capture incidents. So hard brakes, rear ends, anything we detect out of the ordinary, as well as interesting frames. We can program our models based on the geofence to look for things like the aforementioned construction zones or road signs, depending on what sort of data products we are contractually obligated to deliver. We can tell the phone to capture frames when they drive by that area. That information goes straight to the cloud. And then I also mentioned the time lapse. So the time lapse is just our ability to see even more data. We see the full drive on top of any interesting frames or incidents we've captured. The only difference is it comes in after the drive's over. We wait until our drivers are on a Wi-Fi network so we don't eat up their data plan. And so typically we like to tell people that we get that time lapse usually between 8 and 24 hours after the completion of the drive. And then all in all, all of that data comes into the Nexar cloud, and then we do three things with it, all of which are very important. The first is we localize it, and that's why we're here at a GIS summit. So we're putting that imagery and footage against a map, lat long, directional guidance as well. We're running any detections that we need to run for things like construction zones, potholes, road signs, you name it. And then probably most importantly, we are anonymizing the data. So it's imperative for Nexar that we are privacy sensitive about all of this stuff. So that means we blur license plates, we blur faces, and we remove any sort of identifying marks on the driver's dashboard. You know, our goal is not to sell data that ties back to any individual user. We want to make the world's roads safer, and we want to help improve quality of cities and transportations with our data. So when we dive into these products, I'd say let's think about them in sort of three buckets. The first is raw imagery. You want pictures of an intersection, you want pictures of an address, you want pictures of driving late at night. The second is detections. So you want pictures of specific things that we extract from those images. Stop signs and construction zones are two of the examples I've referenced a couple times here. And then finally, change. So we can detect change in stop signs, in construction zones, in potholes over time when we see image after image over a 3, 4, 5, 6 month period. And that has a ton of value as well. So I'll start with images. I'm going to run through a series of different images, and on the left-hand side is going to be Google Street View, which is what most people use for roadway imagery. And then on the right side is going to be Nexar. And one of the purposes here is to show you not only do we have a ton of imagery, we have 20 billion images a month that we're pulling in, but it's fresh. You know, so that gives us a really big advantage in terms of what we can learn from recent images. So we'll start here. On the left-hand side, February 2017, Google Street View, and you see that the left-hand lane is a little bit wider, more space for vehicles. And on the right-hand side, you know, we have construction zone detection, so we can see signage and tiny cones, and the cars are enabled to use the full width of that lane. Another interesting example is turn regulations. So in this image on the left, April 2019, there is no guidance on making a left-hand turn, but by February 2020, they've put up both a sign about left-hand turns as well as an additional stoplight. In this example here, July 2019 to December 2019, so only really about 5 months apart, and they've added a pedestrian crosswalk. This example shows March 2019 on the left and February 2020 on the right, and the right-hand turn lane is completely blocked off. We have barrels as well as signage, and you cannot use that lane. We are also able to reach hard to get at points of interest, such as like, you know, private communities. Again, we're going to anonymize all of the other cars, faces, personal information in the drive, but we can get at addresses and point of interest that Google Street View cannot. And then because we're looking at, a time lapse and our network is generating fresh imagery every single month, we're able to see a construction project as it starts and then a year later when it's completely done. And so that means we're able to identify buildings that are being built versus buildings in use, or if a building changes the business that leases the property, we'll see that it used to be a doctor's office and now it might be a Taco Bell. And our imagery has been particularly interesting to people during the COVID crisis. I mentioned Cornell before. They were using our images to detect the differences in populations wearing masks. So they looked at Chicago versus Atlanta versus Houston to see what percentage of people in the images we generated were wearing masks every single day. Here's another really good example. We've been able to help clients identify when stores were boarded up during the protests in New York, and then when those boards came back down and the stores were back open for business. So moving from imagery to object detections. I've talked about road signs a couple of times. I wanted to give a little bit more of a visual here. So we're working with Drive Ohio among a few other clients. And what we do is we detect a dozen plus different road signs as we're driving through, as our drivers are driving every single day. And then we map that into our CityStream platform. We have a few other ways to deliver that data, which I'll discuss shortly. But we map it to our CityStream platform. You'll see here we have different colored dots for different signs. And then if you drill in, we'll actually show you the images we've collected that verify the sign is where we say it is on the map. We can set this up with a variety of different frequencies, so we can make sure that we have to see a sign 5 times or 7 times before we put it on the map. And then we can also play with the frequency of how often we update the data. Obviously, road signs don't change very often, so maybe we do a 6-month or an annual contract where we run a refresh at a longer cadence. That's compared to something like construction zones, which may change a little bit more frequently. So again, we're detecting a variety of objects that are commonplace in construction zones, cones, signage, barrels. We'll also show you on the map where exactly the construction zone is. In addition to that, we can show you which direction that the construction zone is taking up traffic, and we'll show you a number of pictures. So from all the different parts of the zone that our drivers have driven through or by. We're currently piloting this with Las Vegas and Ohio as well. Last but not least, incident data. So I mentioned this before. We're selling this right now in the private sector to an autonomous vehicle company. But one of the interesting things that we found is that from all the driving and all the incidents that our camera and app are able to detect, we can aggregate that data and provide some really comprehensive and interesting information for cities or states to learn about incidents that are happening on their roads. So that could be a hotspot or velocity map. So we can show you where collisions are happening. We can also show you where cars are driving faster, driving slower. And then data about incidents. So crash types, is it vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to pedestrian, vehicle to bicyclist? Crash cause, so is it reckless driving versus acceleration versus hard braking? One of the reasons we feel we have a really robust and interesting data set is that we're able to detect collisions and incidents under 2G, and we have found that over 50% of collisions happen at less than 2G, and we think that is a competitive advantage for our product. Most of our hardware competitors can't detect incidents at that low of G-force. So how do you guys get all these great data products? We have a few different ways right now, and this list is growing. I would imagine if we come back next year, this list will be an entire slide. So I've mentioned the CityStream platform. If we were to do like a quick trial, that would probably be a very easy way. Give you guys a login, you can come in and play around with the map. API is probably our preferred solution and where we see the most business today. We have recently integrated with Esri, so we have a couple demos on Esri that we could show even after this, and we can push data you can join our group in Esri, or we can push data to your own instance if you're deploying it locally. We can be flexible with those options. And then we are a member of the AWS Partner Network. So there's a few different options for delivery through AWS. If you were buying imagery, we could put it on the data exchange if that's sort of your preferred method of buying, if that's been approved by your institution. AWS has a number of ways that we can figure out how to get you data depending on what data you want to buy. And lastly, I'll just say, we're experiencing a tremendous amount of growth right now. And as such, we're talking to a number of other institutions and GIS providers that you all probably work with. So if there's something you don't see on this list that's your preferred GIS map or a mapping company that you always work with, let us know. There's a chance we might be in talks with them, and we'd love to partner, however you all see fit in order to get you all this rich data. So we're going to stick around and answer questions after this, and then we'll be around for another 30 minutes to meet. I can show demos in Esri, in CityStream. We can talk about coverage, whatever you guys want to talk about. Thank you again for having me, and I'm excited to meet everyone. Thanks.